Sue Tierney is one of our nation's leading experts in energy economics and policy and regulation. She's the managing principal at the Analysis Group in Boston. She has a very distinguished background. She served as Assistant Secretary for Policy at the Department of Energy, a very important position, and Secretary of Environment of the state of Massachusetts. Ladies and gentlemen, Sue Tierney.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Secretary Chu, for including me in this amazing roster of Energy Stars. It's really a pleasure to be here today. I've flown down from Boston, and it's really exciting to be part of this National Day of Service, as well as this amazing historic inaugural weekend. I was listening that this is only the 16th president who's been reelected. That's awesome. I remember it 4 years ago, and it was a very exciting time. I have a different take on energy, but you won't be surprised that some of the themes are things that you've heard others talk about today. I thought I would talk about my little story. You know, I'm not a governor. You are awesome, by the way. I'm not a mayor. I'm not a head of a utility. You're all awesome, by the way, or any of these things. I'm a consultant, but I've been in government before, and for a long time, I've been very interested in energy. It's kind of geeky. So my story is, that's me with the Mary Janes there, in the middle, between my brothers. I've said this once before. I think the reason that I work in energy is because I was in the middle of two guys. And it's very comfortable space working in fields with lots of guys. My little sister, by the way, is the potted plant. She would kill me if I showed a picture of our family, and she were not in it. She didn't exist at this time. But this is your basic 1950s family. I have to laugh. My mother's in her high heels at the barbecue. Do you love that? You know, this was the era of Ready Kilowatt. Who remembers Ready Kilowatt, all-American home, all-electric homes? And I'm kind of making fun of that here. There's something important in the background that you can't see. And that's mountains that are 11,500 feet high. So this is Southern California, about 90 miles from LA, where the mayor described what's been going on. And I lived at the back end of the mountains where the wind blew and you couldn't see the mountains. And as a kid, that seemed kind of weird to me, that they came and went occasionally. And I began to wonder about what that was like and why that was happening over the years. And energy, I took my path into energy. So you saw in the mayor's slides, amazing story of what's happened. But this is what it was like when I was in Southern California growing up. You couldn't see any better than you can see in Beijing today. It was real. It was before a couple of years before the enactment of some of the most important federal laws for environmental protection in the United States. So this was a moment that was very important for me in terms of the choice of my profession. I've always been interested in things at this jigsaw puzzle at the intersection of infrastructure, investment, economics, environmental issues, policy, and government and politics. And energy is all of those. If you get a piece of the jigsaw puzzle wrong, it doesn't lay very nicely. And so there's a lot of interesting things that I've had a chance to work on. So let's fast forward. Again, this is my look at the future of energy with a little bit of back look. And this back look is to see what's happened in terms of energy productivity. So what's energy productivity? Energy productivity is the inverse of energy efficiency. So it's how much gross domestic product you're getting out of every BTU that you're using. And more in the United States over the last 40 years. I guess this is 50 years. Oh, this is my life in front of you. Now that I see this, I'm not 50 either, so if you can read, you'll see what my life is. In any event, this is a period of incredible investment and technology performance that has enabled us to get so much more economic bang for our energy dollar and our energy use. This is energy use, not energy dollar. But you would see a curve that's going up for energy dollars as well. And we've done that while the population it's about 1.7 times during this period. Energy use is about 2.25%, 2 times what it was at the time. But there's 4 times as much electricity here that we're seeing. And this is gross domestic product in nominal terms of about 26 times what it was. So people are driving more, we're getting more investment, we're doing a lot of things, even though there are bumps along the way. One of the things we've learned over this period of time is what an amazing set of resources we have in the United States for energy supply. And you see several pictures of that here. Over on the bottom right, we've known for a really long time about our abundant coal supplies. Saudi Arabia is the Saudi Arabia of oil. We are the Saudi Arabia of coal. The estimates of reserves are maybe 300 years at current levels of consumption. But the other resources are amazing too. Certainly shale gas, you've heard and read about those on front page news stories. The ability to access reserves much more technologically capable these days is making it so the size of our resource base is growing in extraordinary ways. And you can see it's in many different parts of the country, providing lots of jobs and lots of tensions about real community impacts in a number of places. And that same thing is true for wind and solar. Wind, this picture of the wind resources shows both onshore wind, which is famous, the prairies, all these places where people don't live, where it's very windy, are huge, plentiful supplies of wind resources, but also offshore wind. Important statistic on this, if you think about it, is the one that the National Renewable Energy Lab estimated that at 50 miles from shore, and if you think that we have right now about slightly less than 2 gigawatts, if I'm recalling correctly, of solar, of wind, we have about 90 times that amount of current installed wind available offshore. So it's a very, very large resource base, close to where people live, in fact. Expensive at the moment to deploy, but nonetheless a tremendous resource. And solar, you've been hearing about here this afternoon, a tremendous resource base, where this just shows the radiation resources, and you overlay that with different costs of electricity on that map, and you have a lot of areas of the country where it's economical today. These charts show the last 20 years for wind, for solar, and for gas-fired electricity generation, natural gas-fired electricity generation, and the last 10 years of production growth for shale gas resources. These are all tremendously booming activities. The scale of these, by the way, is different, so you can't make the comparison across the charts. The important thing to see is these are taking off for the various reasons you've heard about today in terms of the clean energy investment, the technology improvements, the aggressive efforts of so many parts of the country to do the right thing on these clean energy resources. And amazingly enough, when you look back again with the rear view mirror, electricity and natural gas are actually a good deal. They provide tremendous value. Today, if you look at the red line here, this is between 1978 and now, and it shows the percentage of household disposable income that's used for electricity and natural gas. Compare that to the blue line, which is oil and petroleum products, are taking a much bigger bite out of a household's income. So when you think about the challenges in the energy future, and you think about electricity and natural gas providing important opportunities, we can look at this budget and consider that we get tremendous value, and we've seen that in terms of the energy productivity we've enjoyed. Now let's come back to today again. This is back to Southern California. I wish the mayor were here so he could see me proudly showing the progress. The smog advisories are down, tremendously down. Just this, whereas 25 years ago when I was in school, growing up there were hundreds of days a year when you could not go outside because of unhealthy air. It's a couple of times a year now. They've made huge investment. And this picture there is the occasional day when there are inversions and there are still problems that the communities are addressing, but tremendous improvement. By the way, my little town of Redlands is between San Bernardino and Riverside. That's where those 11,000-foot mountains are. But that progress we've made in LA to improve pollution, so that you can see those mountains again, masks the fact that there's this invisible air pollution going on. So this is the United States. This is not California or Southern California. This is the US CO2 curve, which is very scary. And it's scary for lots of reasons. Of course, its trajectory. When that's about energy productivity, that's a wonderful curve, that growth on that. When that's about carbon dioxide emissions, that's a scary curve. It's scary because, of course, these are long-lived. They'll remain in the atmosphere for decades, if not 100 years, for certain greenhouse gas emissions. It's scary because during this period, the United States has put out more pollution of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions than any other country. And so the legacy of our footprint will remain with our children and their children and their children for many, many decades to come. So this is a scary, scary picture. And this is, for me, the scariest part of it. These are plumes that represent how much cumulative emissions of CO2 each country has put into the atmosphere between essentially my birth year and 5 years ago. So all of the plumes are up now because we've had 6 or 7 more years of CO2 emissions since then. So you see the United States has been the biggest emitter. It was, and so on a cumulative basis, we are still the biggest emitter in terms of our footprint. China, of course, has grown. China has surpassed the United States in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions. But you can see, you can barely see China over there, and it's rising fast. The same is true for India. So this is a very sobering picture of why the United States must take a leadership role on this issue. Gosh, you can't see this very well, and I apologize for that. You saw this on the secretary's slide in a certain extent. This is the billion-dollar weather events over the last 30 years. And you can see Texas has had 50 of them. These are adjusted for inflation, 54 of them. And they are all over the United States in terms of extreme weather events. We've talked about Sandy and its impacts today. I put here a couple of things that are associated with the National Climate Assessment, which is in draft form as of last Friday, talking about the impacts of a changing climate on the United States. And I had the honor of being one of the co-lead authors of the Energy Use and Energy Supply chapter, which looks at the impacts of a changing climate on the energy infrastructure. You see on the left pictures of power plants in California that are going to be exposed to sea level rise. That's the case all over the country. The picture on your bottom right is after Sandy, where New Jersey basically went dark and didn't have electricity supply. If that picture were at another period of time, that would be, New Jersey would be lit. And here's more of these impacts. The secretary and I did not compare notes before presenting our remarks today, but they're very much in line in the sense of we have this tremendous record heat, we have extreme weather events, we have situations where our energy supply, such as the Gulf oil and gas production, was taken out of service and affected United States oil and gas market prices for months and months in 2005 because of the vulnerability of so much of the infrastructure to extreme weather events. And the National Climate Assessment draft uses these estimates of what one would see for various climatic changes over time. This one that I've shown up here is the cooling days. Well, a cooling day, what's that? That's days when you need air conditioning because it's so hot. And you see on the left what's happening in terms of these next few decades, and on the right, extreme increases in the need for cooling and air conditioning and electricity use in the United States. But as sobering as that is, when you think about what's happening globally, it's stunning indeed. Up at the top is the change in energy use for countries over the next 25 years. And you can see the bulging out of the energy use of Asia, of China, of India, Indonesia, a variety of places where the people there are aspiring to the kinds of economic development that we've enjoyed with our highly carbon-intensive energy system. And you see the effects of that in the trajectory of CO2 emissions that are in the base case or current policies case of the International Energy Agency. That's 50% increase in energy use and 50% increase in CO2 if we don't do something else. So I'm very worried. Gosh, I didn't realize that I was an aficionado of Time magazine here. I do not work for them, but they get all these things. And my pictures there on the left are really to talk about the fact that we are going to be going from 7 billion to 9 billion people over the next 25 years. And we will have 3 billion more people in the middle class around the world. This is a challenging thing we must lead. The countries, these are pictures that look just like Los Angeles when I was a kid, as you know, but this is Beijing, New Delhi. This is also Brazil and Indonesia. And so you see that they face the kind of challenges that we've seen in our country, and they have to be dealing with them. So what do? We make commitments and adopt policies to unleash investment in order to become more energy productive. There's scores of ideas. These are well understood things that people need to attack, and we need to get on with it. This is a target recommendation of the Alliance Commission, National Commission on Energy Policy. I've been pleased to be part of that, and they're going to be issuing their report, bipartisan report on things to increase energy productivity. We need natural gas. We need to invest in shale gas resources. It is going to happen and should happen, and it will take us part of the way toward reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it will not take us to a sustainable level of carbon emissions. Plus, it is not sufficient to do it in the same old way. We have to do it prudently and responsibly. I put up here the golden rules for a golden age of gas. These are well understood practices that the industry needs to do, both in the United States, and continue to make cutting edge improvements. Many of these are recommendations that were part of the team of recommendations that came from the Secretary of Energy Advisory Board a year and a half ago, where there is continuous progress on these being made. Third, we do need to continue to unleash investment. I'm so glad I followed Michael. He talked to you about the experience curves. We've seen in every one of the energy technologies these downward curves as technologies enter the marketplace and costs are driven down. And so we need to focus on the fact that our market systems do not reflect a price on carbon. And so until they do, we need policy tools to take into account long-term gains and short-term gains associated with pivoting to a lower carbon supply. Finally, in spite of the fact that I laughed when I said that ready kilowatt was the way that people talked about electricity homes when I was growing up, and that became, a bad thing to say. In fact, I stand for the proposition with many others that we actually need to increase the electrification of our energy systems. We need to do that globally, we need to do that in the United States, but we need to do that with low carbon electricity supplies. So one would expect to see more electricity use. You would expect to see a much brighter set of lights in a lot of parts of this picture, and as long as that's low carbon, we'll be making a difference. My pledge is that, or my service offering is that my generation, you remember the picture of the Mad Men family from the 50s? My parents were the greatest generation. They saved the United States at the time of World War II, and my generation needs to step up to the plate and do this for our kids and the kids after that. Our kids are counting on us, so I hope you're along with me on this story and hope that we tackle this problem. Thank you so much.